Exposed, 7 spine-chilling, unexplained horrors of the Forbidden Cumberland Mountains. The stories are told in hushed tones, whispered around campfires beneath a sky blotched with stars. The Forbidden Cumberland Mountains cradle secret 7 spine-chilling, unexplained horrors that are harbored deep within their misty shadows. Few dare to tread in these parts, for those who do often emerge haunted by an unshakable dread. They say once you enter, the mountains remember your name, and your fears. Sarah stood at the threshold of her childhood home, the air thick with nostalgia and something darker. The town of Glenwood seemed to curl into itself, an expanse of Gothic woods where every rustle and creak raised the hairs on her arms. As a child, the whispers of the local legends were simply ghost stories. Now they felt like warnings. She had returned, but the weight of the place compressed her heart as if trying to squeeze out some long-held secret. The first strange element struck her as she began unpacking the boxes stacked high in the attic. Old toys, photographs, and trinkets lay coiled together like a jumbled snake. But buried beneath the remnants of her past, a dusty, leather-bound diary beckoned. She yanked it free, the brittle pages crumbling under her fingers. With each word she read, a story seeped forth, a chilling history of 7 horrors that plagued the town and its ancestors. A mournful wail echoed in her mind. She could almost hear the tortured spirits from the pages moaning for recognition. As she descended the attic stairs, the feeling of being watched enveloped her. It was a primal fear, a cold prickle that crawled up her spine, compelling her to look back only to be met with silence. The family home creaked ominously as if the very walls remembered tales of malevolence. Every shadow seemed to inch closer, every flicker of the lights set her heart racing. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That night, Sarah's world spiraled into unnerving chaos. Objects danced subtly in her peripheral view, her son's toys rolling across the floor, kitchen drawers creaking open. She could hear voices gurgling darkly through the walls, slicing through her sleep with bone-chilling clarity. Her son, blissfully unaware, clutched a faded teddy bear that once belonged to her, unaware of the darkness gathering outside their door. Drained, she wandered into town the next day, yet another layer of the enigma unveiled. The townsfolk shared anchoring glances, leaning together on porches like moths swarming around a dim light. They spoke in fragmented whispers of shadowy figures, legends forgotten, and fears that clawed at their hearts. Some offered comfort, while others recoiled like the spirits woven into their shared histories. Questions nagged at her as she pieced together a connection to her father, who had remained cruelly elusive in life. The storm clouds gathered overhead, heavy with bitterness and unspent rage. They were more than just folklore, they were a reckoning. As the winds began to howl, Sarah realized that she must confront the shadows before they consumed everything she cherished. Tension hung like a blade. She stood at the divide between the light of her childhood and the encroaching dark, heart pounding, mind racing. Was she prepared to challenge the spirits and the ghosts of their past? The realization hit her like a thunderclap. This was not merely her fight. The spirits roared, swirling like a tempest. They beckoned her deeper into the history of Glenwood. Would Sarah summon the courage to face the haunting that plagued her family, or would the suffocating darkness swallow her whole? The following night, the storm rolled in with a fury that rattled windows and twisted branches. Rain lashed against the roof like heavy fists, drumming a relentless beat that echoed in the back of Sarah's mind. She clung to the diary, its worn pages now steeped in dread, each word a pulse that synchronized with the raging tempest outside. Just as sleep threatened to engulf her, a chilling shriek cut through the storm. Her heart leaped, and adrenaline ignited her senses. The sound felt alive, piercing, begging for attention, and bouncing off the walls of her mind. She climbed out of bed, compelled toward the source, drawn by an invisible thread that tugged at her every step. her son slept soundly, blissfully unaware, while shadows flickered in the beams of lightning stabbing through the windows. Sarah stepped lightly through the hallway, the wood groaning beneath her feet, a rhythm that matched her anxious heartbeat. The shriek came again, closer now, echoing from the depths of the house. It led her to the basement door, a portal to forgotten memories and lurking shadows. The air turned colder around her, wrapping her in an icy embrace. With a hesitant hand, she gripped the doorknob, her breath catching as the handle clicked open. Darkness yawned before her, an abyss waiting to swallow her whole. In that moment, she felt the weight of the diary in her hands. Could it provide the answers she so desperately sought? "Mom?" A small voice rose from behind her, making her jump. It was Jack, his wide eyes glimmering with curiosity yet shadowed with sleep. "What's happening?" "It's okay, sweetheart," she rushed to say, her voice surprisingly calm against the storm's chaos. "Stay close to me." As they stepped into the basement, Sarah flicked on the light. The bulb buzzed painfully, throwing weak illumination over long-forgotten furniture covered in dusty sheets. She felt the prickle of dread again, the sensation of being watched lurking around her shoulders like a settled fog. Then she heard it, a whisper, almost unintelligible, slithering through the shadows. "Find the truth." Her heart raced, each syllable pulling her deeper into the dark legacy she had returned to face. "What do you want?" she whispered back, fearful of the answer and yet yearning for it. Jack pressed against her leg, his small hand trembling. Suddenly, the old house shuddered violently. The shelves rattled, and several objects clattered to the floor, shattering the uneasy stillness that had settled around them. A cold wind surged through the basement, extinguishing the flickering light, plunging them into darkness. "Mom!" Jack's voice was a shrill note of panic. "Hold on tight," she cried, feeling her way back towards the stairs. Each step seemed to echo with malevolence, as if the entire foundation of the house pulsed with the spirits of the past. As they emerged into the hallway, the air shifted. A heavy presence loomed before her, solid and malevolent, whispering her name with a guttural insistence. Panic tightened in her throat, but she couldn't turn back now. She had to confront whatever was haunting her family before it took her son too. "Show yourself!" she yelled defiantly, anger intertwining with fear, rooting her to the spot. The oppressive weight of the darkness pressed in, but beneath the shroud, a faint glow began to emerge. A figure materialized at the end of the hall, indistinct yet compelling, flickering with the pulse of the storm outside. "Sarah," it rasped, each syllable echoing through the air like a mournful song. In that moment, a realization struck her like lightning. The shadows weren't mere remnants of fear, they were memories, living and breathing, demanding recognition. She needed to delve deeper into her family's history, confront her father's secret, the very thing that connected them all. Clenching the diary, she took a shaky step towards the figure. "What do you want from me?" But before the specter could respond, a deafening crash echoed from outside, and the earth trembled beneath her feet. The house groaned as if warning her, but the urgency was sharper. Her journey into the heart of darkness had just begun. Would she unearth the truth buried in the past, or would she find herself lost in the shadows forever? The figure wavered, a human silhouette cloaked in flickering shadows. Its whisper slithered through the air, wrapping around Sarah like a chilling embrace, pulling her toward a memory, her childhood home, laughter filling the halls, devoid of the dread that now dripped like cold rain. "Please," Sarah pleaded, her voice trembling, "I need to know." "What truth?" The apparition stretched its arm, a beckoning gesture that felt both inviting and ominous. Lightning illuminated the space, and Sarah caught a glimpse of what lay behind the figure: faded photographs, old toys, remnants of joy festooned with dust. Yet, they seemed to pulse softly, a desperate heartbeat against the stillness. Jack squeezed her hand tighter, his small fingers trembling, mirroring her mounting fear. "Mom, it's too dark, I want to go back." His voice was a fragile thread, easily fraying in the tension. "Just a moment," Sarah whispered, her eyes not leaving the ghostly figure. As if sensing her hesitation, it lowered its arm, retreating into the shadows, leaving behind an aching silence. Sarah felt an icy dread settle in her stomach, a feeling that the figure held something vital, a key to their nightmare. Then, with every breath, the air thickened. A guttural growl erupted from somewhere deep within the walls, as if the house itself weighed in on their confrontation. Books flew from the shelves, dust exploded like fireworks. Sarah's heart raced. "We need to leave," she urged, swift and desperate. "No!" Jack cried. "I want to stay. I want to see." And with that, he wrenched himself free of her grasp, racing toward the flickering apparition. "Jack!" Panic surged through Sarah. She lunged forward, but the moment felt eternal, her feet trapped in the heavy air as her son pierced the darkness with his small frame, drawn in by a force she couldn't comprehend. "Jack!" She shouted again, voice cracking. The shadows surrounding him began to pulse, twisting like smoke. They swirled around the boy, then faded just enough for her to see. Jack stood entranced, eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and terror. "Help!" he squeaked, lost in the grasp of the unknown. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah burst past the threshold, closing the distance between them. Hands shaking, she reached out, gripping Jack's arm, pulling him back, but an invisible wall pressed against her, a barrier built of years of family pain and despair. "Let him go," Sarah pleaded, voice raw with emotion. The apparition trembled, flickers of recognition sparking in its almost human eyes. "What do you want?" she gasped, the words clawing their way up her throat. From the darkness, words poured forth like a flood, chaotic yet structured, echoing Peter's past. "The truth will consume you, find the key, reveal the bond." The image of her father flitted through her mind, his grim face, haunted and distant, forever standing on the edge of sorrow. What was it he hid? What shadow pulled them home, luring her back to the cursed walls? As she scanned the room, her eyes fell upon a trunk, dusty and adorned with rusted locks, huddled in the corner. "Jack, we have to go." But she couldn't move him. The moment she felt the grasp of the figure loosening, a crack echoed outside, the last remnants of the storm now venting in fury. The ground shook. The house was a living entity, bent on keeping them within. With renewed determination, Sarah released Jack physically but held onto him mentally, her heart pounding for his safety. "We need to uncover what happened." In that fleeting revelation glimmered the realization that the trunk held more than just remnants, it may possess the very answers they needed. "Help me," she called to the spirit. "Show me the truth." A blinding light erupted in the basement, illuminating her surroundings. The shadows danced wildly, converging towards her. Jack gasped, grabbed her hand once more, pulling her against him. As the air thickened, the walls moaned and cried out, echoing the memories of loss. The pressure tightened like a vice, the room vibrating with past secrets. With every ounce of strength, they charged toward the trunk that now glowed faintly in the storm. "Are you ready?" she asked Jack, forcing a brave face. The moment they reached it, the trunk sprang open, unleashing a torrent of energy, whispering tales that had lain dormant for decades. "The truth must come out," yelled the ghostly figure as it reached out again, but this time with urgency. As secrets spilled forth like an avalanche, Sarah understood that she stood on the precipice of their family's darkest secrets. And as echoes filled her mind, a burning question lingered heavy in the air: what horrors would the truth reveal, and would it tear them apart or finally set them free? Jack's fingers tightened around Sarah's hand as the trunk emitted a blinding light that swallowed the room. It felt like being thrust into an ocean of brilliance, the shadows dissipating into a haze of muffled voices and half-formed images. The air buzzed, alive with frequency, time itself seemed to warp. "Mom? What's happening?" Jack's voice quivered against the chaotic sounds swirling around them. "I don't know, sweetheart," Sarah cried, her heart racing, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "Stay close to me." The light pulled them forward, deeper into whatever hidden history lurked inside the trunk. Spectral faces flared around them, some familiar, others unrecognizable. Their mouths moved as though trying to scream, but only silence escaped into the storm. Frantic memories of childhood laughter blended with agonizing cries, each tugging at her core, desperate for acknowledgement. In a split second, she spotted her father's face appearing among the phantoms. The grim expression she'd seen so many times before morphed into something else, a pleading look of urgency that reverberated like thunder through her mind. "Sarah!" he echoed, the voice ringing in her ears like a death knell. "You must know the truth. Break the cycle." "Dad!" she called out, but the figure blurred and vanished into the brilliance, leaving her grasping at a void. She turned toward the trunk, the source of this otherworldly frenzy. Its edges shimmered, painstakingly ornate and cracked, as if it had weathered not just time but the very essence of despair itself. "It's the key, Mom!" Jack yelled, pointing toward something glimmering inside the trunk. A key, old and rusted, lay atop a stack of yellowed papers. It pulsed with a beckoning rhythm that called to Sarah. Before she could respond, the room lurched. The walls trembled, releasing a low growl that felt ancient and powerful. Shadows crept back in, thicker and more pronounced, circling them like predators. "We have to get it," Jack urged, terrified yet electrified by the presence of the unknown. "Hold on," Sarah shouted, gripping Jack's arm tightly as she stepped toward the brightness, reaching for the key while the shadows intensified around them. As her fingers brushed the cold metal, an overwhelming wave of energy surged through her. The trunk quaked violently, as if resisting her touch. The breath caught in her throat, visions flooded her mind in a dizzying whirl: her mother's laughter, her father's sorrow, the anger that had taken root in their home. Secrets woven into the very fabric of the family tree. "Mom! Do something!" Jack cried, his voice now a frantic plea, barely breaking through the harrowing noise. In that moment, Sarah understood. The truth wasn't just about revealing hidden memories, it was about breaking the chains that bound them. Summoning every ounce of courage, she twisted the key in the lock. A deafening roar erupted from within the trunk. Light exploded outward, casting the room into chaos as shadows twisted and convulsed, battling against the brilliance now pouring forth. The air ignited with acrid smoke and the pungent scent of despair. From that tumult, agonized faces emerged, relatives long lost, wrapped in the threads of their sorrow, all clamoring to be heard. Each gaze restated the urgent truth: they were tethered by grief, blood, and silence. "Mom! Please!" Jack's voice broke through the chaos, echoing her father's warning: the cycle. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped back from the trunk, disbelief mixing with ferocity. Without knowing why, she shouted out, "Let it go! Let it all go!" The light intensified, forcing the shadows to recoil, the anguished faces fading back into oblivion. Jack clutched her arm tighter, eyes wide, brimming with uncertainty. The growl returned, now rising to a climax. With a powerful explosion, the trunk closed shut, silencing the tortured wails as the apparition stood solid before them one last time. "You have chosen," it whispered, almost lovingly, before melding into the darkness. As the air settled, quiet draped over them like a heavy blanket. But beneath that silence, a chilling understanding sank in. They had uncovered something immense, and yet, the question loomed larger than life: what lay in the darkness now, where the truth had stirred? Jack looked up at Sarah, his gaze flickering between fear and trust. "Are we safe now?" But the answer was just beginning to form in Sarah's mind, an ominous truth promising both revelation and peril. "Not yet," she whispered, a storm brewing in her chest. "Not yet." The air was still thick with unresolved energy, the remnants of the chaotic light swirling around them like a toxic fog. Jack's grip on Sarah's hand tightened as they surveyed their surroundings, which seemed to have shifted in the aftermath. "Mom, what are we supposed to do now?" Jack's voice was barely a whisper, trembling with uncertainty. Sarah inhaled deeply, fighting the waves of nausea that rolled through her. Instead of a tranquil silence, the room now groaned with an unearthly resonance, a heavy echo that whispered of things yet to come. Shadows lurked close, lingering just beyond the edges of their vision, like predators watching, waiting. "I don't know, Jack," she murmured, heart pounding like an erratic drum. "But whatever we just uncovered, it's not finished with us." Suddenly, there was a soft crackle to their left. Sarah spun around, her instincts kicking in. The trunk, once a vessel of revelation, now emanated a chill that sent a shiver down her spine. Its once bright aura had faded, it lay dormant, but Sarah could feel its weight and expectation looming, pressing against her very soul. The yellowed papers that had once fluttered wildly were now still, a marker of the chaos they had just experienced. She stepped closer, curiosity battling fear, when something shifted. The air thickened, almost vibrating with the remnants of those spectral faces. "Mom, look!" Jack's voice broke through her trance, feverish excitement pulling her back. His eyes glistened, wide with fear and something else, an eagerness she couldn't quite place. "Jack, wait!" she cautioned, sensing the urgency of stopping him before he dove into the unknown. But he had already shuffled towards the trunk. As he reached down and touched the papers, the atmosphere ignited with an electric tension. The moment his fingertips made contact, the world exploded into sound. The growl returned, but it morphed into a chorus of lost voices, articulate and pleading. "Let us out," they cried, a tragic harmony that clawed at Sarah's heart. "We are bound to this cycle, Jack, please." Sarah shouted, her voice rising above the wails, panic pooling in her stomach. "We need to back away." But Jack's expression had changed, it was a look of fierce determination. "No. This is our chance to understand, Mom. They're trapped." His fingers traced the sepia tones of the papers, skimming over their contents, emblems, names, places lost to time. Each touch seemed to awaken something. The shadows thickened, swallowing the light. It felt as if they were stepping into another realm, a chasm of despair and anger. Sarah could almost feel the past clawing its way out, desperate to be recognized, demanding release. Suddenly, the trunk shook violently, emitting mournful cries as it threatened to break even further apart. Sarah braced herself, adrenaline spurring her forward. "Jack! We can't draw them out. We need to contain this." "Contain it? They're trapped here." His voice grew louder, insistent. "This is all because of the cycle we're a part of. If we don't figure this out, they'll never be free." The shadows flickered restlessly, pulsing with his every word, hungry for recognition, a hunger they fed with fear. It struck Sarah then, a revelation that sent a chill up her spine. The cycle wasn't just hers, it belonged to everyone, a lineage of pain embedded deep into their family tree. She could feel the weight of her ancestors' sorrow pressing down on her, relentless and unyielding. "Jack, you're right," she gasped, the realization dawning on her. "We need to learn their stories. We have to break the cycle." But as they leaned over the trunk, deciphering the hidden truths, a chilling wind swept through the room, extinguishing the last remnants of light. Shadows grew denser as they closed in, a menacing presence rising just outside their reach. "What's happening?" Jack's voice faltered, fear creeping in. And there it was, a shadow looming as if it had a corporeal form, darker than the night, imbued with an ancient hatred, a grief that transcended their understanding. "Step back," Sarah commanded, the urgency igniting. A primal instinct to protect. But as she shifted, Jack remained rooted in place, eyes locked onto the approaching darkness. "Mom, I need to see." Between them, the air shimmered with a fierce energy, the shadows writhing as if protesting against revelation. Old secrets begged to be unleashed, and the darkness pulsed with an alarming hunger for recognition, fear coursing through her veins. Sarah's voice cracked. "Jack! We have to go now." But the shadow lunged forward, tendrils reaching out, and Sarah realized this was only the beginning. The cycle was no longer just theirs to break, it was a storm gathering momentum, and they had already drawn the first lightning from its depths. "Mom, But before Jack could finish, the darkness crashed against them, and everything exploded into chaos once again. What emerged in the wreckage of the light would change everything they thought they knew. Would they be ready to confront the horror lurking within their family's story? The world around them imploded with a cacophony of chaos. Jack's terrified scream was swallowed by the overwhelming roar of voices twisting together, echoing with despair and anger. Sarah felt herself being pulled, drawn towards the shadow, while Jack remained mesmerized by the fearsome spectacle. "Jack! We have to get out of here." Panic clawed at her throat, but her words sank beneath the weight of the darkness. It clawed at her, filling her lungs with dread. For a moment, she lost sight of Jack, the shadows flickering, seemingly alive, reaching out to snare him in their embrace. "Mom! I can see them. I can see them." His voice trembled with the intensity of revelation, awestruck by something that drew him closer to the trunk. Without thinking, Sarah lunged, grabbing Jack's arm and yanking him back. "Don't you see? This isn't just a history lesson, this is a trap." Fighting against the invisible hands that seemed to wrap around them, they stumbled away from the trunk. Jack struggled against her grip, eyes wild, desperate to understand the force that called to him. "We have to help them, Mom. They're begging us." "Help them?" The words lodged in her throat, bitter and stinging. "They'll drag us down with them." As the trunk's wood creaked ominously, a blinding flash erupted from within, illuminating the room in a spectral glow. Shadows flickered and twisted, revealing fleeting glimpses of anguish and agony. Faces mournful, pleading raced past her mind's eye, rising like a tide, desperate for her attention. She could barely comprehend the swirling emotions and stories they carried, all wrapped in a tapestry of pain. "Let go, Mom!" Jack shouted, wrenching free from her grasp, and as if propelled by the anguish of the past, he rushed toward the trunk again. "No!" Sarah cried, feeling the ground shift beneath her. The shadows grew aggressive, their tendrils assaulting her, whispering in tongues of despair, begging for recognition. A rift opened in the air, a dark portal that loomed behind them, spokes of shadows reaching out as if searching for something or someone. Sarah felt the heat of anger and malice radiating from it, an unrelenting force. Something ancient lurked just beyond her vision, waiting for the right moment to breach the divide. With every ounce of strength, she lunged for Jack again and seized him just as he reached out, fingertips brushing the trunk's edge. "You have to listen to me." He turned, eyes wide with confusion and frustration, but the urgency in Sarah's voice snatched his attention. "We don't know what we're dealing with. This isn't right." A wail erupted, reverberating through the air as something shook the very foundation of their reality. The chilling sound was both a warning and a summons, echoing through generations. "Enough!" Jack yelled, shaking off his mother's hold. "We can't run anymore." The shadows writhed frantically, encroaching upon them with malicious intent, and Sarah could only stand by helplessly as Jack stepped closer yet again. "Jack, please stop." Her heart thundered in her chest, a desperate plea hanging between them. "Mom, you need to trust me. They're trying to tell us something." But as she watched, Jack dropped to his knees, reaching into the trunk as if surrendering to whatever darkness awaited. The shadows surged, and with a deafening boom, the air crackled, igniting with a surge of raw energy that knocked Sarah backward. Stumbling, she barely regained her footing, heart racing in terror. And just like that, it settled the world, intent and expectant, fell silent. "Jack!" She screamed, a visceral fear twisting in her gut. Light flickered momentarily before vanishing entirely, plunging them into an unsettling darkness. As her breath quickened and her fingers fumbled for anything solid, she felt a chill wrap around her, as if the shadows were tightening their grip, drawing them into an abyss of secrets. They weren't just shadows anymore, they were the manifestation of all that had come before them, a collection of souls tied to their fate, and as the presence loomed ominously over them, each breath felt heavier, each heartbeat louder. "Mom, I can hear them." Jack's voice trembled, no longer filled with eagerness but weighed down by a terrible realization that in the suffocating void, Sarah wondered what horrors awaited them in the depths, each heartbeat echoing the fragile line between discovery and desolation. What truths lurked just beyond their grasp, concealed in the darkness, begging to be revealed? They had only begun to scratch the surface of a nightmare that had lived countless times before. "Get ready," she whispered, half to herself, half to Jack. "This is just the beginning." Jack's whispers echoed through the darkness, slicing like a knife through the suffocating silence. "Can you feel them, Mom?" "They're all around us." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, a raw rhythm of fear and confusion. She couldn't respond, she could barely breathe, the air thick with something more than just the shadows that surrounded them. It was as if the very darkness pulsed, an entity filled with the weight of countless years, burdened by forgotten tragedies. "Mom, they want us to understand," Jack insisted, his voice now a mix of desperation and resolve. "We have to listen. It's our chance to help." Fear clawed at Sarah's throat. If Jack believed he could connect with whatever lay in this abyss, how could she stand in his way? But she was terrified. The stories tied to this darkness were not just legends. She felt their truth, like a living creature brushing against her skin, cold and clamoring for recognition. "Jack," she whispered, her voice shaking. "What if we don't come back? What if this changes everything?" Their surroundings shifted subtly, shadows swirling with newfound energy. Flickers of memories ignited within her, visions of lost lives and forgotten screams. Would they uncover secrets meant to stay buried? Her gut twisted at the thought. "Mom." Jack's voice cut through her fear, sharp as shards of glass. "They're waiting. The only way out is through." Suddenly, the air around them seemed to thrum, vibrating with an intensity that threatened to shatter her resolve. Shadows cinched closer around Jack, wrapping him in a cloak of energy that pulsed like a living thing. They weren't just shadows anymore, they felt like memories yearning to be known, screams begging to be heard, summoning every ounce of courage. Sarah stepped closer. "Jack, hold on to me," she cried, reaching for him. She could feel the tug of his spirit, an ancient longing that both enticed and terrified her. He grasped her hand tightly, but his gaze was fixated on the trunk. "We can change things, if we understand their pain." As if in answer, a low rumble echoed from the shadows, vibrating through her bones. It felt like a warning. The whispers rose in intensity, becoming a frantic symphony of demands and pleas. She couldn't decipher the words, but the emotions were stark rage, sorrow, desperation. "Mom. I need you to trust me." Jack shouted over the cacophony, urgency etched deep in his voice. "Help me unlock whatever this is." His determination lit a spark within her, a flicker of hope amidst the looming dread. But uncertainty rooted her to the spot, weighing her decisions heavily. Could she trust him? Or was she signing them both into darkness? With a shuddering breath, Sarah nodded. "Okay. Let us try." As they both reached towards the trunk, the shadows lunged, pulling them closer to the edge of a precipice neither had anticipated. A shockwave of energy surged from the rift that pulsed behind them, snapping through the air like lightning. In that instant of realization, Sarah glimpsed a flicker of light dancing on the horizon, almost like a beacon. But the shadows tightened their hold, an icy grip thirsting for the warmth of their souls. "Jack!" she screamed, and it was as if the world teetered on the brink of destruction. Would they plunge into the darkness forever, lost in the chaos? But as they touched the mystical trunk, a flood of visions burst forth, flashes of life, heartache, and fear. The stories trapped within the darkness clawed their way into their minds, intertwining their destinies with those of the forsaken, and in that chaotic rush, amid the cacophony of sorrow, Sarah felt the unmistakable presence of something powerful, an unseen force shaping their fate. "What have we awakened?" Sarah gasped, as the shadows coiled and writhed, becoming almost tangible, alive with echoes of the past, and in a heartbeat of silence before the storm, she understood, the truth was a dangerous weapon, one that could shatter their reality. What would it mean to wield such power? And how would it change them? The weight of the moment threatened to crush them both as the shadows surged, eager to draw them deeper. Only the darkest secrets awaited them, truths they hadn't asked for but were unable to escape. "Hold on, Jack!" she shouted, gripping his hand tightly as the shadows consumed them. Desperation pulsed through her veins. What would they uncover? The shadows whispered their fate, leaving them teetering on the edge of revelation and doom. As the world around them twisted and churned, Sarah braced herself for what lay ahead. What monsters lingered in the depths, and would the truth bind them or tear them apart forever? How far would they go to uncover what waited in the shadows? The darkness enveloped them in a cold embrace, swallowing their cries, their fears, and transforming their thoughts into echoes that spiraled through the abyss. Sarah clutched Jack's hand tightly, feeling his pulse thrum against hers, a fragile reminder of life amidst the overwhelming foreboding. What will happen now? She breathed, her throat clenched tight. The shadows writhed violently, like restless spirits clawing at the air, yearning for release or revenge. Each flicker of movement sent chills racing down her spine, as if they were alive, hungry, vengeful. "Just hold on." Jack's voice rang strong, but Sarah felt the tremor beneath it. He was scared. They both were. Sparks of brightness danced before their eyes, blinding flashes interspersed with darkness-piercing memories of lives lost, fears overcome, regrets formed. As the shadows pulsed and twisted, images began to crystallize, surrounding them like a tempestuous storm. A woman stood, eyes wide with terror, pleading for help. A child's laughter resonated, tainted by an echo of anguish. They were witnessing moments long buried, trapped eternally within the fabric of this cursed place. "Jack!" she gasped, the weight of despair crashing onto her. "These faces, they're suffering." "I know," he shouted, roaring over the cacophony. "But they're crying for us to find their truth, Mom. We can't turn away." Sarah's heart raced. What could they possibly do to make a difference? Would they trail further into this horror, digging into the deepest wounds of those entangled with the shadows? A panic surged within her, choking her voice. Suddenly, the shadows lunged, coiling around her and Jack. The sensation was suffocating, wrapping tight like barbed wire, threatening to pull them down. "Let go of us!" Sarah cried, instinctively pulling back. Yet the more she resisted, the tighter their grip became, an inescapable clutch fueled by pain and desperation. "We have to fight," Jack urged, his eyes fierce with determination. Their connection felt like a bright flame against the darkness. If they could just hold on to that spark, the shadows roared, a visceral sound that echoed through the air, vibrating the ground beneath them. It was a mourning, a visceral acknowledgement of betrayal. "What's happening?" Jack's voice cracked. "Mom, I can see them, I can feel their pain." "Then let us speak for them," Sarah shouted back through her fear, reluctantly embracing the chaos swirling around them. "Use their voices." With a deep breath, Sarah closed her eyes and focused, ignoring the noise, the anguish surrounding them. She pictured the faces, each etched with sorrow. "We're here," she shouted, her voice a beacon against the swirling shadows. "We can help. Tell us your story." The shadows seemed to hesitate, the chaotic motion slowing for a heartbeat. A cold wave rolled over them, a moment of hesitation, then suddenly a piercing scream broke through the silence. It was unbearable, a raw injection of despair, and Sarah felt it break against her soul. "Mom!" Jack cried, his grip tightening as the shadows quaked violently in response. "I can't lose you!" she yelled, panic surging anew. Would they be consumed? Would they spiral forever into despair? In that moment of chaos, a shimmer flickered through the darkness, a fractured piece of light breaking through, shifting ever closer. A whisper brushed against Sarah's ear, an echo of a life once lived, lingering and beseeching them. Help us! They were not just lost souls, they were a chorus of pain demanding release, each haunted cry pushing them deeper into the heart of a cold, unfeeling void. Sarah steadied herself, feeling the tremors of despair shake her deeply. They were not just witnesses, they had a duty. What if we're too late? She whispered, the weight of her concern suffocating. Then we fight for them. Jack shouted, his resolve an electric thread sparking through the darkness. Something ignited within her, a force not just of fear, but of choice. In that moment, they reached for each other, drawing on their connection as the echoes of despair erupted into a monstrous roar. Their voices intertwined, pushing through the darkness, sending tremors, shaking the very fabric of the shadows around them. How far could they venture? As the darkness surged in an eager rush, Sarah readied herself for the final plunge into the chaos that lay before them, knowing she had to embrace the shadows and the light together. And in the midst of the swirling tempest, she saw a figure emerging, cloaked in darkness but with an air of regal authority. Who was this entity they had awakened? What would it reveal? Sarah's heart quickened as Jack gasped, "Mom, what do we do now?" As they braced themselves against the storm of unleashed turmoil, the true battle between light and darkness loomed, leaving their fates hanging by a fragile thread. Would they discover hope in despair, or would the shadows consume them whole? The figure loomed larger, coalescing from the swirling black like a dark storm cloud taking shape. Sarah squinted, her eyes straining through the shifting shadows. Was it human? A trick of the mind? Whispers cascaded around them, flaring up in wild bursts, drowning their thoughts in a sea of urgency. "Mom, it's looking at us!" Jack shouted, his voice trembling as he stepped back, inching closer to the warmth of Sarah's side. The creature's features were vague, obscured by shadows, yet somehow its presence felt omniscient, as if it knew their every fear. It raised an arm, pointing a skeletal finger towards them, the motion sending waves of cold dread creeping up Sarah's spine. "Where are they?" It rasped, a hungry echo that resonated through the air. "What have you done to our voices?" A collective gasp seemed to escape the shadows as Sarah and Jack exchanged glances, their minds racing. They hadn't done anything to the lost souls. "We're here to help," Sarah shouted, the words leaving her lips without thought. "We heard your cries and we want to find your truth." The dark figure recoiled as if struck, shadows swirling erratically around its form. An anguished wail erupted, its mournful sound slicing through the din of despair. Jack's grip tightened on her hand, fear pouring through him, but Sarah pressed forward, feeling a surge of courage. "Your voices," she called, desperation coloring her tone. "We're willing to do anything but tell us what we need to do." In a flash, the shadows erupted, momentarily lifting the veil of darkness that had clung to them so tightly. Faces emerged from the chaos, a man in tattered clothes, a young girl with wide, tear-streaked eyes, an elderly woman clutching a photo close to her chest. Their pain was palpable, a heavy weight that pressed into Sarah's chest. "Help us!" The voices merged into one, a haunting litany echoing in the void. "What do you want?" Jack yelled, eyes wide. His innocence shone stark against the grim tableau before them. "Release!" The words seeped from the trembling lips of the woman, resonating through Sarah's bones. It was so simple and yet so complex. How did they give release to souls trapped in eternal torment? A low growl resonated from the dark figure, anger rippling through the air like a storm gathering strength. "You dare disturb the balance!" It boomed, shaking the very essence of the shadows. "Please, we're not here to harm anyone." Sarah screamed back, the desperation clawing at her throat. "We want to understand your pain." The dark figure advanced, shadows swirling dangerously around it, and Sarah felt the urge to flee. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and run, but somehow she stood her ground, pure determination surging within her. Then, Jack stepped forward, breaking away just a fraction. "What do you want from us?" he asked, voice low and steady, as if he were addressing a frightened animal. The courage he had drawn from her ignited anew, the shadows folded back slightly, allowing a glimmer of light to pierce through. With each word Jack spoke, it felt like they were challenging the dark entity, shaking its grip on the very fabric of the shadows. But would it be enough? In that stillness, the dark figure paused, uncertainty flickering across its face. You think you can comprehend our suffering? It hissed. Sarah felt the urgency swell in her chest, pleading to understand at a deeper level. We want to hear your story, she cried, emotion bursting forth. The whispers turned into a storm of voices, fury, sadness, and hope colliding. She could feel the shadows curling around her like cold tendrils, but beneath the suffocating darkness, a spark ignited. As the cacophony grew louder, she took a deep breath, summoning all the courage she could muster. Tell us your truth. In response, shadows exploded around them, coalescing into something more tangible, a portal or a chasm, beckoning them to step closer. Do you dare step into the unknown? The figure loomed closer still, demanding an answer as the void flickered between despair and possibility. Together, Jack whispered, determination shining in his eyes. As they took a step forward, the shadows surged, eager to swallow them whole. What awaited them on the other side? Would they uncover the secrets hidden within the shadows, or would their quest for truth lead them into a darkness deeper than they could ever imagine? The shadows began to recede, drawing back as if hesitating. Sarah felt a weight lift slightly, but the tension remained thick in the air. They stood at the precipice, Jack's small hand in hers, both a beacon of trembling hope amidst chaos. Are you ready? Sarah whispered, her heart pounding like an echo in a cave. More than ever. Jack replied, steely resolve replacing his earlier fear. Taking a breath, Sarah nodded. Then let us find out what they want. They stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the unknown. The world shifted around them. The darkness morphed into light, flickering wisps of memories darting by, fleeting images of laughter, joy, sorrow, and deep longing, memories stitched into the very fabric of their existence. It felt overwhelming, these echoes that roamed freely, tangled in emotion, desperately grappling for release. Mom, look! Jack pointed ahead, his voice breaking through the whirlwind. There, illuminated in soft light, a figure stood, a woman bathed in a serene glow. Her once anguished face was gentle now, the lines of a heartbreaking past softened as she reached out. You've come, she murmured, voice like warm honey, layered with the weight of longing. Who are you? Sarah felt the urge to sway back, fear flaring once more. I am one of them, the woman replied, arms wide, tears shimmering in her eyes. I was lost, like so many, bound by the cycle of grief, but I can finally speak. Jack tugged at Sarah's sleeve, a spark of recognition flickering within him. What do you want us to do? To break the cycle, you must hear our truths, she implored, a sadness echoing in her voice. Only then can we be freed. A flicker of doubt crossed Sarah's mind, but she pushed through. What truths? What do we need to know? The woman's face shifted, morphing into images of her ancestors, a tapestry of pain, loss, anger, and heartache told through the generations. Jack squeezed Sarah's hand tighter. They want us to acknowledge them. To remember and let go. Yes, the woman affirmed, eyes aglow with hope. You must release us. A wave crashed over her features, flickering as if she were about to dissolve back into the shadows. Then we will, Sarah spoke firmly. We'll honor your stories. The shadows darkened again, pulling the woman back momentarily, then revealing themselves anew, each face emerging, worn but determined. They were clinging to life, begging for acknowledgement, stories they once thought lost suspended in the ether. Tell us. Sarah cried, her voice matching Jack's fervent urgency. We're listening. With a collective sigh, the spirits began to share their tales, their voices intertwining. Each word etched into Sarah's heart as the weight of their suffering bore down on her, like a storm ready to erupt. She felt the tears on her cheeks mingle with Jack's as they whispered back. "We see you. We hear you. You are not forgotten." Comprehension dawned. This wasn't just about facing their fears, it was an act of pure love, a commitment to break the chains of silence. Jack's eyes sparkled with the intensity of the moment. "You can let go now. Please." A light radiated from the spirits, warmth spilling through shadows as their anguish began to dissipate like mist in the dawn. The warmth wrapped around Sarah and Jack, a promise that the darkness would not engulf them anymore. And then, finally, the woman smiled, the shadows intertwining into brilliant light. "Thank you," she breathed, letting the light enfold her fully. One by one, the spirits followed, ascending towards the realm of peace, each carrying with them the pain of the past that had weighed so heavily. Suddenly, laughter broke through, their joy echoing around them, dissipating the darkness in waves of glimmering light. The world shifted again, and Sarah felt the profound stillness, a settled energy mingling with the shadows that had once overshadowed their lives. "It's done," Sarah said, the realization dawning on her. "We did it." Jack beamed up at her, his eyes wide with wonder, but there remained a deep connection to that realm they had briefly entered, a tether that couldn't simply be cut. "Mom, do you think they'll be okay?" "They are free now, Jack." "Will they still be with us?" Sarah knelt down, wrapping him in her embrace. "In their own way, yes. All they wanted was to be remembered and acknowledged. We'll keep their stories alive." As they stood together, the familiar landscapes of Glenwood bloomed around them. The weight of the house no longer hovered, but rather felt like a shelter, welcoming. They had faced horrors that danced like shadows but had emerged victorious, stronger together, bound not just by blood, but by stories shared and lives transformed. A heavy sigh escaped Sarah as she smiled down at Jack, whose eyes sparkled with newfound understanding. "Let us go home, buddy." As they walked outside, the light of the new day greeted them warm, illuminating the once dreaded hills and casting away the fear that had haunted their heritage. But before they stepped away from the house forever, Sarah took one last look back. The home that had held fear and darkness now stood as a monument of courage, a reminder of the connection they shared with their past and the whispers of those who had come before. "Ready?" "Ready," Jack replied, his smile lighting up the new path ahead. Hand in hand, they ventured down the winding road, stepping boldly into a future steeped in understanding, guided by the laughter of forgotten souls finally at rest. If you've loved this spine-tingling adventure, you must subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't miss another exclusive story. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the stories coming. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about how this ended. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who could use a chill. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let's keep exploring together.